The children of Ishmael. Over the years Ishmael's children themselves had children. His descendants increased and formed tribes which spread out all over Arabia. One of these tribes was called Quraysh. Its people never moved away from Mecca and always lived near the Kaaba. One of the duties of the leader of Quraysh was to look after those who came on pilgrimage to the Kaaba. The pilgrims would come from all over Arabia, and it was a great honor to provide them with food and water. As time passed, however, the Arabs stopped worshipping Allah directly and started bringing idols back with them from the different countries they visited. These idols were placed at the Kaaba, which was no longer regarded as the sanctuary of Allah, as Abraham had intended it. It was, however, still respected by the Arabs. Around this time the well of Zamzam disappeared beneath the sand. Also at this time, Qusay, one of the leaders of Quraysh, became ruler over Mecca. He held the keys of the temple and had the right to give water to the pilgrims, to feed them, to take charge of meetings, and to hand out war banners before battle. It was also in his house that Quraysh settled their affairs. After Qusay's death, his son Abdu Manaf, who had become famous during his father's lifetime, took over the leadership of Quraysh. After him came his son Hashim. It is said that Hashim was the first to begin the two great caravan journeys of Quraysh, one in the summer to Syria and the north, and one in the winter to Yemen and the south. As a result, Mecca grew rich, and one summer Hashim went north to buy goods to sell in Yemen. On his way he stopped in Yathrib to trade in the market, and there he saw a beautiful woman. She was Salma, the daughter of Amr ibn Zayd, who was from a much-respected family. Hashim proposed marriage to her and was accepted because he was an honorable and distinguished man. In time, Salma gave birth to a beautiful son, and as some of his hair was white they called him Shayba, which in Arabic means gray-haired. Mother and son stayed in the cooler, healthier climate of Yathrib, while Hashim returned to Mecca, but he would visit them each time he took his caravan to the north. During one of these journeys, however, Hashim became ill and died. Shayba, a handsome, intelligent boy, grew up in his uncle's house in Yathrib. He was proud of being the son of Hashim ibn Abdi Manaf, the head of Quraysh, guardian of the Kaaba and protector of the pilgrims, even though he had not known his father, who had died while Shayba was very young. At Hashim's death his brother Al-Muttalib took over his duties and responsibilities. He traveled to Yathrib to see his nephew, Shayba, and decided that as the boy would one day inherit his father's place, the time had come for him to live in Mecca. It was hard for Salma, Shayba's mother, to let her son go with his uncle, but she finally realized that it was for the best. Al-Muttalib returned to Mecca, entering the city at noon on his camel with Shayba behind him. When the people of Mecca saw the boy they thought he was a slave and, pointing at him, called out Abdul Muttalib, Abdul being the Arabic for slave. Al-Muttalib told them that Shayba was not a slave but his nephew who had come to live with them. From that day on, however, Shayba was always affectionately called Abdu al-Muttalib. On the death of al-Muttalib, who died in Yemen where he had gone to trade, Abdu al-Muttalib took his place. He became the most respected member of his family, loved and admired by all. He was, however, unlike those Arabs who had given up the teachings of Abraham. The promise at Zamzam. The well of Zamzam, which disappeared when the Arabs placed idols at the Kaaba, remained buried under the sand. Thus, for many years the people of Quraysh had to fetch their water from far away. One day, Abdu al-Muttalib was very tired from doing this and fell asleep next to the Kaaba. He had a dream in which he was told to dig up Zamzam. When he woke up he was puzzled because he did not know what Zamzam was, the well having disappeared many years before he was born. The next day he had the same dream, but this time he was told where to find the well. Abdu al-Muttalib had one son at that time, and together they began to dig. The work was so difficult that Abdu al-Muttalib made an oath to Allah that if one day he were to have 10 sons to help him and stand by him, in return he would sacrifice one of them in Allah's honor. After working for 3 days they finally found the well of Zamzam. Pilgrims have been drinking from it ever since. The years passed by and Abdu al-Muttalib did have 10 sons. They grew into fine, strong men and the time came for him to keep his promise to Allah. He told his sons about the promise and they agreed that he had to sacrifice one of them to see which one it would be. They decided to draw lots, which was the custom of Quraysh when deciding important matters. Abdu al-Muttalib told each son to get an arrow and write his own name upon it and then to bring it to him. This they did, after which he took them to the Kaaba where there was a man whose special task it was to cast arrows and pick one from among them. This man solemnly proceeded to do this. On the arrow he chose was written the name of Abdu Allah, the youngest and favorite son of Abdu al-Muttalib. Even so, the father took his son near the Kaaba and prepared to sacrifice him. Many of the Quraysh leaders were present and they became very angry because Abdu Allah was very young and much loved by everyone. They tried to think of a way to save his life. Someone suggested that the advice of a wise old woman who lived in Yathrib should be sought, and so Abdu al-Muttalib took his son and went to see if she could decide what to do. Some of the Meccans went with them and when they got there the woman asked, "What is the price of a man's life?" They told her, 10 camels, for at that time if one man killed another, his family would have to give 10 camels to the dead man's family in order to keep the peace among them. So the woman told them to go back to the Kaaba and draw lots between Abdu Allah and 10 camels. If the camels were chosen, they were to be killed and the meat given to the poor. If Abdu Allah was picked then 10 more camels were to be added and the lots drawn again and again until they finally fell on the camels. Abdu al-Muttalib returned to the Kaaba with his son and the people of Mecca. There they started to draw lots between Abdu Allah and the camels, starting with 10 camels. Abdu al-Muttalib prayed to Allah to spare his son and everyone waited in silence for the result. The choice fell on Abdu Allah, so his father added 10 more camels. Again the choice fell on Abdu Allah, so they did the same thing again and again, adding 10 camels each time. Finally they reached 100 camels, and only then did the lot fall on the camels. Abdu Allah was saved and everyone was very happy. Abdu al-Muttalib however, wanted to make sure that this was the true result so he repeated the draw 3 times and each time it fell on the camels. He then gave thanks to Allah that he had spared Abdu Allah's life. The camels were sacrificed and there was enough food for the entire city, even the animals and birds. Abdu Allah grew up to be a handsome young man and his father eventually chose Amina, the daughter of Wahb, as a wife for him. It was a good match for she was the finest of Quraysh women and Abdu Allah the best of the men. He spent several months with his wife but then he had to leave her and travel with one of the caravans to trade with Syria. On his way back to Mecca from Abdu Allah became ill and had to stop off in Yathrib to recover. The caravan, however, continued on its way and arrived back in Mecca without him. On hearing of Abdu Allah's illness, Abdu al-Muttalib sent another son, al-Harith, to bring Abdu Allah back to Mecca, but he was too late. When he arrived in Yathrib Abdu Allah was dead. Amina was heartbroken to lose her husband and the father of the child she would soon give birth to. Only Allah knew that this orphan child would one day be a great prophet. The elephant refuses to move. Abraha, who came from Abyssinia, a country in Africa, conquered Yemen and was made vice-regent there. Later, he noticed that at a certain time of the year large numbers of people would travel from all over Yemen and the rest of Arabia to Mecca. He asked the reason for this and was told that they were going on pilgrimage to the Kaaba. Abraha hated the idea of Mecca being more important than his own country, so he decided to build a church of colored marble, with doors of gold and ornaments of silver, and ordered the people to visit it instead of the Kaaba. But no one obeyed him. Abraha became angry and decided to destroy the Kaaba. He prepared a large army led by an elephant and set off towards Mecca. When the Meccans heard that he was coming they became very frightened. Abraha's army was huge and they could not fight it. But how could they let him destroy the holy Kaaba? They went to ask the advice of their leader, Abdu al-Muttalib. When Abraha arrived outside Mecca, Abdu al-Muttalib went to meet him. Abraha said, "What do you want?" Abraha had taken Abdu al-Muttalib's camels, which he had found grazing as he entered Mecca, so Abdu al-Muttalib replied, "I want my camels back." Abraha was very surprised and said, "I have come to destroy your holy Kaaba, the holy place of your fathers, and you ask me about some camels?" Abdu al-Muttalib replied calmly, "The camels belong to me, the Kaaba belongs to Allah and he will protect it." Then he left Abraha and went back to Quraysh and ordered them to leave Mecca and wait for their enemies in the mountains. In the morning Abraha prepared to enter the town. He put armor on his elephant and drew up his troops for battle. He intended to destroy the Kaaba and then return to Yemen. At that moment, however, the elephant knelt down and refused to get up, no matter how much the soldiers tried to get it to move by beating it. But when they turned its face in the direction of Yemen, it immediately got up and started off. In fact, it did the same in any other direction, but as soon as they pointed it towards Mecca, it knelt down again. Suddenly, flocks of birds appeared from over the sea. Each bird carried 3 stones as small as peas and they dropped them on Abraha's army. The soldiers suddenly fell ill. Even Abraha was hit by the stones, and fled in fear with the rest of his army back to Yemen, where he later died. On seeing their enemy flee, the Arabs came down from the mountains to the Kaaba and gave thanks to Allah. After this, Quraysh gained great respect and became known as the people of Allah, and the year in which these events took place, 570 AD, was named the Year of the Elephant. In that year Allah had saved the Kaaba and he would soon bring forth a prophet from among Quraysh. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, hast thou not seen how thy Lord dealt with the owners of the elephant? Did he not bring their stratagem to naught, and send against them swarms of flying creatures, which pelted them with stones of baked clay, and made them like green crops devoured by cattle? Quran 105 verse 1-5.